Morning everyone, and welcome to the Integration Joint Board, June the 4th, 2024. Just get through some of the etiquette of the meeting, please. Can I remind all members that meetings are recorded and will be made available for public viewing on the EGHSCP webpage, and recording will be published within the next 24 hours. Members are asked that they like to ask a question or be included in the conversation, that they should raise their hand. Can I ask all members who are joining remotely to have their cameras on when we're speaking to ensure full engagement and participation in the meeting? If you have the meeting, please state this in the chat section to allow us to ensure that we're recorded at all times. Could all members who are submitting their apologies for any meeting of the IJB, including the committees, please ensure that they advise the chair of that meeting and advise the business support team the name of the member who will be substituting for them at the meeting, to ensure they receive all the necessary paperwork ahead of it. Can I please remind all report authors to assume that everyone has read the reports prior to this meeting and they are not required to provide detailed update to the meeting. Now, due to the requirements around the pre-election period, which began on May the 25th, reports associated, it was May the 30th, reports and associated decisions on subjects including maternity services in Wigtonshire and short break services, which were planned for the meeting today, have been postponed until after the general election date on the 4th of July. Members who we have agreed can join virtually are Kim Downs, Gail McGregor, Paula Stevenson, Stephen Morgan, Fiona Kane, and Katie Kerr. All them on, and we have Greg Black joining us also. We have apologies from NHS voting member Vicky Keir, local authority voting member Andy Ferguson, who is substituted by Catherine Carruthers, local authority voting member Chrissy Hill, who is substituted by Gail McGregor, Scottish Care Rep Debbie Cochran, who is substituted by Fiona Kane, local authority staff side rep Anne Farrell. Do you have a substitute? No. And registered medical practitioner Gracie Bell. And we've got substitute members, which is Bill Evan. Bill, first time I've seen you on these meetings, so welcome. And thank you to everyone else who's joining as a substitute. Welcome, Bill. On to second item. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Chair, can I just raise on item 7 in the directions, just because it makes reference to NHS 24, but on my register I'm the vice chair of NHS 24. Attention members, I'm not sure what the detail of the conversation will be.
Yes, thank you. On to item 3, minutes of the Integration Joint Board held on 16th of April 2024. That was a special meeting held to approve the finances. And I have any matters of accuracy for anyone who attended? Any other matters that are not put on the agenda? Propose of them. Ian Carruthers, and a second, please. Well, thank you. Item number 4, action list and rolling agenda matrix. Since the last meeting, the number of actions which have now been updated or highlighted is complete. The action list is attached for information. Amber will continue to update and link with the individual responsible. Do members have any questions in relation to the rolling matrix?
Two ongoing ones, one of which is on the directions which have been covered today in Kirsty's report. And then the next one was an update regarding the cottage hospitals, which was due to come back in September at the September meeting.
Okay, no problem with that. As I checked through, under transformation, innovation and delivery, item number 3, I had an update on the 3rd of May, where it said that contract development group conversations about providing care differently have ceased, and the sector D&G are no longer involved in these conversations. Then they're able to provide any information in relation to the So what's that?
You should ask the clarity on what we raised to.
I think Gracie and Naomi were having conversations about that, but I'm not
Yeah.
aware that they were linking up with the meeting though. Gracie and Naomi Nicol, who I think she sits on that committee, is a sector, so I would have to double check with her.
Yeah, can we check that on? Have you got any?
Other than I don't imagine why we wouldn't have withdrawn as far as I'm concerned from the conversation. So my reading of that was the one seems to have ceased, therefore the SDG have then been withdrawn from the group because we don't have a contribution to make. But
Yeah, I think that's probably what.
if there's something else from the group, check with me and I'll make sure we reconnect.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, nothing else from anyone else? Okay, thank you. And you'll continue to update that, Mark. Moving on to item number 5, we've got Alison in attendance today to present the report, highlighting the changes to voting members of the IJB. Alison, do you want to take us through the paper, please?
So this report is brought before members today. You may remember last month we discussed some vacancies that we had around the table. In particular, Brianna Davis-McCrory had just given a notification that she was resigning from the NHS board, and thus the information going forward as well. So, Kim, and thanks very much, Kim, for all your work that you've done around this, getting sort of names and around these committees, and for Bill attending as substitute member on behalf of Brianna until a suitable replacement has been found. So you'll see in the report we have got notification that, as I said, Bill will join an interim to the board. For audit, risk and governance, Kim will be the chair and Greg not the vice chair, the other NHS voting member. For performance, finance and quality, again, Kim, you'll take on the role of vice chair this time with Willem sitting on that committee. Strategic plan delivery and commissioning, it'll be Greg yourself as chair with Vicky Keir as the other member. And transformation, innovation and futures, it'll be Willem as vice chair and Vicky Keir, who will sit in that as the other NHS member. And what we need is for yourselves to confirm that you're happy with these appointments as they are. And just as an aside, I think, Andy, we spoke prior to this report being submitted, just to let members be aware that at the September meeting, hopefully we'll be able to bring forward a further report on membership, which will see us filling the positions from the NHS staff side, unpaid carers and service user representatives. So hopefully we'll be back up to full today.
Okay, thanks for that, Alison. Any questions for Alison? Okay, yeah.
Not so much surprised, you used to welcome the board coming forward and welcome Golan and Vicky to the Transformation and Innovation Futures Committee. Forward to working with them.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'd like to thank Kim for the work that she's done, but also for other members for their flexibility in accommodating this and making sure that we still function properly. My only concern might be that if we do appoint another board member, that we have yet another reshuffle. And obviously, it's about the consistency within the committees and getting that build up of knowledge, because as we know, it's not easy to just step in and be fully hitting the ground running, as it were. So it'd be good if we could get a wee degree of stability, but I suppose if we're going to try and recruit somebody, then there's going to be a little bit of shifting and changing. Anything else from anyone else? Okay, so the recommendations were we note that Bill is substituting in the interim and approve the changes to interim membership of committees as outlined in section 3.3. One okay with that? Any dissenters? Okay, thanks for that, Alison. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6, IJB committee updates from the chairs. Now, we don't have an update from the audit, risk and governance because they haven't had a meeting since our last meeting, and their next meeting is due in about 2 weeks' time. So what it does is finance, performance and quality, which I chaired on the 9th of April. At that meeting, we had Donna Maxwell come along and give us an update on the performance of directions. And she presented to us a flow chart which outlined how that worked. There was a bit of a conversation around that, which I think Donna took away and made some slight amendments. And there was comments that perhaps what we were looking at was very operational. But I do think it's important for members who participate on the board to understand how things work on an operational basis. Also, I think that that diagram was there to try and help people who are not involved in IJB to understand how we work, how the whole system works. And so I think it's really important that whilst members also understand that people outside can look in and make some sense of it. So I think that there was a benefit in that conversation. I understand that's gone away, that's been done, and I think David flagged up that, you know, we need to understand that when we're issuing directions, there is an operational aspect to that, and that we need to understand what we're asking of other people. It's up to them to deliver it. Andy Ferguson also flagged up that obviously the council's going through a restructure right at the moment, where some of our committees are changing, and as a consequence, that may have an impact on how we deliver it through there. So I think it's really important that we take that into consideration when we get to that point as well. Also talked about the national health and wellbeing outcomes, and Nicole's agreed that she's going to take that up with the operational team, so we're on with that. Also, we've got the community planning partnership. We've got one this week, haven't we, Val? Yeah, exciting stuff. And I think, Val, we're going to ask you to be a rep on there to sort of feedback on that. You weren't at the meeting, I don't think, so. It's a thing we do to try and encourage attendance. Right, so, yeah. Pick up this, sorry, sent Amber or Kirsty will pick up a conversation with you to report through committee. We haven't been attendance, so obviously they've. Okay, then we had the contract monitoring report looking at care homes and such like with Peggy Taylor came, and she gave us a bit of an input. And there was some conversations around some of the report and some of the information that we were getting. I think David flagged up the comes to the small numbers, the anonymity of that, and it makes it a bit difficult. So you're going to do some work on that to see if we can get a bit more detail without compromising the integrity of the information. Perhaps a decision on that was noticed that, and then just in terms of reference, that committee previously had 6 members and always had 6 members up until the last change of the council, at which point we've come to a point where we don't really have the resilience, as Alistair's just given in the previous paper. To try and get 6 voting members on that committee would be difficult. So we agreed, and we'll bring it forward to you today, hoping that you'll agree also that that committee should be consistent of 4 members, but Kim Downs will join us as vice chair. And I think that's where we're at with that. Alison highlighted that there was no service rep included in the committee. But, sorry, there was a service rep included in all committees, but no carers rep. We were looking at how we were going to try and resolve. So ultimately, we talked about the changes to committee and the draft terms, which would include the carers. Any questions by anyone? Did I reflect on all that?
You did cover it.
Thank you very much. It's like I was there. Okay, moving on to strategic planning, delivery and commissioning update for Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just linking into your final update there, we also discussed the terms of reference of the group, and the membership had discussed carers rep, etc., and service users rep, as was mentioned earlier. So we recommend approving the change to the terms of reference, and understand the terms of reference for the other committees may be discussed later in the year. We had an update from the strategic planning group, so a very welcome update from them. Again, a common theme was membership and attendance at that group. Obviously, that's a very important group to gather as a diverse and wide range of views as possible from key stakeholders, but that does make it difficult to maintain attendance and things if you widen out the group. So we had a good discussion about that, and we discussed various different options. Would it be better to limit membership, for example, to a core group of people that you would could almost guarantee attendance, etc. But it was the outcome of that discussion was no, that it was better to keep that membership as diverse. So there was discussion around if there's wider support to help recruit members to that group as well. So that was a good discussion. We did ask, though, as we move forward with the updates from this strategic planning group, we're going to move into written updates to this committee, to the strategic planning committee. So we will be reviewing the attendance as well. So we've asked them to feed back on that so we can keep an eye on it, because obviously that's a key source of views on any decisions and directions, etc., that we may make. So we want it to be well attended. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. We had an update on the provision of interim and intermediate care beds. We had a good discussion around this. Discussion around things like it's about reallocation of money. It's looking at that rather than there isn't any new money to provide this provision. But reassurance that it's an incremental approach, so it's a kind of realistic approach to provide to achieving this provision, and there is ongoing discussion with care home providers as well. So we got a good update on that. We also got an update on the cottage hospital process, but obviously during the election period that may be a bit changed how that's going forward. That will be changed how it's been taken forward in terms of consultations, etc. So I don't think it's relevant for me to update now. Maybe David or someone can update on what that looks like now. And finally, we were presented with the progress on implementing the independent advocacy plan, which is a statutory requirement, and that's an item on the agenda later. So we were supportive of the proposals for that plan, and so we recommended to IGB that they approve the paper that's been presented today, and that was following a discussion in the committee. So I think that's probably the main highlights, unless anyone else from the committee wants to raise anything.
Silence was deafening. Thank you for that, Greg. Did anyone get any questions for Greg? No? It's going to be a quick meeting this one, isn't it? No, thank you for your comments about written reports, and I do think, albeit that I've not done one as yet because I found it quite daunting. You brought an example to the last IJB, and I thought it was very, very good. And I think that we should all perhaps follow that template, and I think we should have written reports in relation to our committees in order to sort of have that recorded, so that when we're not here. But also, it removes the emphasis and the responsibility from Amber to try and sort of capture that. Then also it makes it easier than trying to go through the minutes and try and pick things out, because you as chair are able to sort of identify what the highlights were. So I do think that should be the way forward, and that our committee chairs should really submit a written report. Talking of which, planning, delivery and commissioning, that's Greg, and then we're on to transformation, innovation and futures, and that's Ian.
Thank you very much. I'll take on loads of comments at the end of the next meeting.
As I said, stick my hands up, I'm skilled.
I'm going to say, not at all, but just follow the notes of the last meeting. So I'll just move through them. Four was our action list and the agenda, similar to just down here, and we update things, and we that membership update. Action resolved. The IGB, that was something with like NHS board member. That's resolved here. Item 6 was the Galloway Community Hospital review update. So Carl Ambridge and Recreation gave oversight for a presentation shared highlighting. Facing this because of the sensitivity of the just outlining the process being and moving to a more sustainable position with the medical community hospital, as well as the opportunities and challenges that exist on that side. We also heard from the interim chief officer about the important role that the community hospital plays in meeting the needs of the people in Sunra and the surrounding areas. committee members confirmed that they wish to see the Galloway Community Hospital continue to meet these needs and instructed the Health and Social Care Partnership to develop plans for this. Whilst recognising the Integration Joint Board, body can make or issue a policy decision during the pre-election period. The committee welcome the opportunity to share its views more fully at the earliest opportunity, and if there is agreement for the IGB, they can make a strategic commission decision and issue an associated direction to support and formalise work. And just, I suppose, in more layman's terms, from my perspective, here that we want to instruct support, we have to show that the clear support from the committee to make sure that we see that it's a sustainable, workforce sustainable, all these we should support both the sector users through the staff and the wider community. A sustainable model come forward and be presented to the Integration Joint Board for future day, and that was the emphasis. And I didn't really want to say anything of that in regards to it because of the political sensitivities on it. Number 7 was about the digital delivery plan. It's not a demo. That was, again, it was interesting. It was a noted report. I spent a feeling can be. Number 8 was annual delivery plan. Again, that was restricted in information. David presented that one, but with limited information at that time, so it was a small verbal update in regards to information. Wait for the information so we get a fuller update. Nan Allen, she also gave an 9 with a verbal update again, strategic needs assessment, which was well received. And Rod finished the meeting off, as he always does, talking about his participation in engagement for activity. It's part of the report. And again, that was very much well received and well discussed. It was a good meeting, well attended. It's been very lucky that way. Full attendance. I look forward to the best of things once we get beyond the recess for us. Seeing them reports coming forward, making good decisions and engaging with the communities across the place in Galloway. I would take any questions.
Okay, being mindful of the pre-election period, does anyone have any questions for Ian in relation to his update? Okay, well, thanks for that, Ian. Okay, we'll move on the agenda. Moving on to item number 7. As per our action plan, formal update for each individual direction was requested of Kirsty Bella, who is here today to take us through the report and the presentation. Kirsty, can I hand over to you?
You can, thank you, Chair. So this has been tabled and discussed at length at our Health and Social Care Partnership meeting recently. I am assuming you've all read the report, but also this is just to note this is progress just up until the kind of March 2024, and also any kind of further updates on directions will follow in the next iteration. I do want to be quite clear that this is the first iteration of this report. This is not perfect. I am more than happy for this to be not torn apart, critiqued, shall we say, and because I do certainly think we need to be a bit more smarter in terms of what our measures of success are against those directions. Also, what is the budget that we're allocating, and they should be our measures of success in terms of the performance of those directions that get taken through the committee and then formally in here. So there is basically 2 asks in here about the assurance and the approval of the progress that we have, which has been kind of red, ambered and greened across 30 kind of extant directions, but also the approval of this type of reporting structure. And this hasn't just been me that worked on this, it has been David's team supported me with this, so we start to get this into a much more refined place because it's taken us some time to get here. So just noting that, I would like to just probably open it up to questions. I know that Chair has a few questions, so I will just stop there and not go into too much detail.
Okay, up to the group. Anyone got any questions in relation to how we're performing against the directions? Yeah.
So I'm looking at appendix 1, so page 16.
Sorry, can I ask you to speak up a wee bit, please?
Page 17. I'm looking at the screen at the same time. And there's a lot there, and when I was reading that particular point, you say that actually through my mind, and it's our performance targets against what we can realistically achieve. And I'm thinking, and Grace Bell brings up continues at different committees and IGB actually, even on the communication side in particular, okay, there maybe has to be a point of realisation of budget constraints around and how we communicate that. Some big decisions to be made at some point in the future, and that's so. Some of these, I don't know if these targets are realistic or no, maybe they're set away for us that we can't change them. So I just need to understand fully, right, okay, if we're never going to meet these targets, how do we reflect that?
Yeah, and just to kind of come back on that, I think, and this is me just thinking about, let's issue a new direction. Okay, so we should be issuing a new direction, quite specifically asking the partnership to deliver on said direction. The partnership needs to assess the impact of that, the risk of the implementation, the budget requirements, the changes to clinical pathways, all of that aspect we need to be considering and feeding that back in and actually saying, as the operational arm, saying, here's the measures of success that we think we need to monitor this again. I don't think historically we've been that great at that, because there's a lot of, you don't want to get into operational, but you do want to get into operational because you need to measure the impact of that direction. So we need to find a balance with this, I think, Ian. And in terms of, are these realistic? I think that's what we do need to probably have a even fuller discussion around some of these things in here, because they are quite old directions and very operational. And I'll note the Flow Navigation Centre, for example, I'm saying it because Alan mentioned it, that was essentially just to set up a Flow Navigation Centre. I like to take the centre out of that. So because it's actually an administrative place where we're at operationally with that. Now that was a historical reason why that was set up, and we have set that up because it's a Scottish Government directive to have that in place. And we're now currently relooking at that through the unscheduled care portfolio work as well. Similar to the GP out of hours direction that's sitting in there, that was about having our rotas 100% compliant. We're at that stage. Now that's very operational as well. So it does beg the question about whether that level of operational information should be around the table.
Yeah, I think just in reference to page 16 and 17 of the document, where there is quite a suite of measures, the NHS board are reviewing what the reporting looks like and what that is, and that therefore would change this. Stephen and myself are also doing a lot of work around about what the adult social work performance measures may look like and what that suite looks like. And I think what's key to this table, and we need to add in, is potentially a benchmarking figure so that we can see around this table how the partnership in Dumfries and Galloway is comparing on a national level to give some context to the measure. Because if you look at, for example, the cancer measure there that's red, or the TTG measure that's red, we are one of the best performing health and social care partnerships in Scotland on that, and therefore I think that kind of context within the table would help, and that's certainly what we are building with David's team through Ananda, and we are building with Stephen and others through that kind of social work governance group that Stephen's built up as well, Ian. So I think this will improve, and I think that is the message for me in a glance at this document, in terms of just what does that mean, and is it realistic, and how is it in terms of other areas as well.
Can I just come back at that point? Because I mean, I definitely question answer. So as far as we as an education joint, if we look at this properly, compliance scrutiny, well, I think we should be critical of this. We understand what's going on in the background, being able to get that information for Scotland, what we can actually do, in real terms achieve at a local level. How maybe some services might have to be prioritised over others. So it's the timelines we were looking for, rather than getting into a stage here, rather than the timelines, we see that information back potentially. I'm thinking more than about that, Chair, if that's possible. If that's not for the day, obviously I'd like to see it coming into the stream. Possibly can.
Councillor, I think you make good points, Ian, and I do think that perhaps things do need contextualising, but I think that if we are prioritising, we need to understand why we're prioritising. But again, that's operational, but we need that reassurance here. And what we're looking for is the reassurance that having given out a direction that we understand what we're trying to achieve when we do that. But not only do we understand what we're trying to achieve, we have realistic targets that are in place. And if we're not hitting our targets, we need to understand why. And I do think that there's a benefit in contextualising it nationally, but also we need to understand why we're not doing it locally as well. So I do think that that's important. But on reviewing some of these directions, this conversation that I've had with Kirsty, which is why she had got a few questions. I mean, I look at some of these. So for example, 1905 is about day services, and it says to fund day services to a total of £594,700 per annum for 3 years. And then we've said, yeah, we've completed that, but actually, why did we do that? What were we intending to get from it? And it says there, funding allocated, difficult to measure impact when day centres reopened, model was changed. So actually, we've got a direction there that we as an IJB have issued, saying nothing. It says give them some money, we give them some money. But what was the strategic aim, what we're trying to achieve, what have we done with it? Val, did you want to come in? No, sorry, I thought you were.
I didn't know David was going to talk.
I want to take one point up.
Sorry.
So there's a tension here in terms of the IJB not being operational, but actually, Chair, I don't think that prioritisation is operational. The key role and function of the IJB is to use the updated budget to meet the needs of the population. So the IJB, by its very definition, has to be doing that prioritisation. And that needs to be driven by the type of data that Nicole's describing, that target operating model, what we think we can achieve with the resources available to us. It's really vital that the IJB understands that. So it does feel a bit of a tension between the IJB getting pulled into that operational space. You need to be there to understand what's possible with the budgets available to you, so you make informed decisions. So I think it's a really helpful conversation. In terms of the day services piece, you're absolutely right. Day services direction, as I understand it, over time, came out the back of a review of day services that was done by the IJB in 2018, I think. And what we should have done in that direction is say, these are the outcomes we want to achieve through implementing that review in terms of how we will improve our ability to support living. We didn't do. But what we will do through our new contracts established as of this year is have those measures in place. So if the IJB are minded to supersede this direction with another direction, which is about commissioning day services under a new contractual framework to better meet the needs of people within the independent community, then we can capture some of the.
No, I appreciate that, David, thank you. And again, it is a conversation I've been having with Kirsty, is that I think what we need on these, and you're saying you think it was 2018, I think what we need on these directions is, what was the meeting where it was identified that we wanted this direction, so that we understand what the process is, we want to do that. We understand the conversation that was taking place, and what is it we're trying to achieve. So we have to have a strategic aim, and we need to link it back to what our strategic overview is, so that we can make sense of what that is. And when we're saying we're going to give them £500,000 per year, what are we going to give them that for? What are we hoping that they're going to deliver? And we need that. So I think that we need to sort of look at some of the processes around this so that we can understand, because we all change. You know, you're saying 2018 predates you, definitely predates me, and it's somebody come in to sort of pick this up, but a lot of it doesn't make sense. What we also need is Katie to be aware that the finance is linked to it. And if we have money to attach to something, that we understand where it's coming from, that we can afford it on an ongoing basis. And if there are any savings to be made from it, that we can get it fed back in through Katie and then redirect it and such like. So I think that there's a circle that needs completing here, that, you know, we identify where it comes from, what we want to achieve, where's the money, what's the delivery arm, and then it comes back to me in terms of how we're doing. So that's certainly my take on it. But
Can I just come in there?
happy to have controversial contributions.
No, that was around obviously when this was done, and when we, and I don't know what the case is now, but when a direction is sent to the council or the NHS, it would go with a copy of the report from that meeting, just to kind of link that into you. No, nothing would be agreed at the IJB, nothing should be agreed at the IJB regarding the direction that there isn't a financial pot of money set aside to deliver it.
Mhm.
So no directions should be agreed around this table without that in the first instance. So we should, and that's then for, I suppose, for Katie to then, if that's something that's ongoing, that's then for her to find some.
Yes, no, thanks for that clarity. But I do think that it's important for us as members to understand how much has been allocated. And I think if it's there, it's explicit that there is a financial implication for that. What's the resource? What's it coming from? Because how do we know if we're actually getting value for money? And if actually it's costing us more than what we already have. The whole purpose of us is to make it a bit more efficient, but to actually deliver that service in the communities and such like. So I think it's really important that we have an understanding, and the more information we have at the outgo, we can better assess it at the end. But no, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's voluntary day services you're talking about.
So again, sorry?
Voluntary day services is what you're talking about.
That was, yeah.
So
That was.
just reflecting, because I remember some of the information we've got, you're absolutely right. I'm sure that 500,000 saved us another 4 million with the information at the times it was showing. In regards to, so that you're absolutely right. As a new member coming in, you think, well, look, that's against that money, have we get a bang for a buck, or we just throw money against it? So to speak, but no, you're absolutely right. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful report, Kirsty, because I think you can see like how detailed we've been at some directions and then how strategic some directions are. And it's like, as you say, David, it's how we get that kind of happy region going forward, and actually that we need to pay a bit more attention to the directions. And I guess one of the things you should like to know, the direction template that we've actually got in place maybe needs a bit of a review, because in terms of that performance monitoring arrangements, the said directions will be reported to the IGB committee and an annual report on the current direction. It doesn't actually say what is the performance monitor measure of that specific direction. So there's maybe a bit of tweaking to that document that's needed, and colleagues will have to remind me. I can't remember how we do directions, because sometimes there'll be direction presented to us, and sometimes we'll say we need to issue a direction, and how's that then followed up so we know it's all completing things? I wonder if there's maybe just that bit of the process maybe needs a bit of kind of review and kind of tighten up a wee bit maybe.
No, I think you're dead right. Do you want to say anything, Kirsty?
No.
No, I think you're dead right, because the conversation I had with Kirsty before we got going was that we should issue a direction. We should give it to the Health and Social Care Partnership to have a look at it, and for them to then feedback to us what they intend to do with it. So we should get that coming back to us saying, okay, you've issued us this direction to do A, B, and C. We think we can do A and B, but C might be difficult, but these are the measures we're going to put in place to say how we think we're going to achieve it. And it's all process based. It's really about us understanding how we're working, how we're functioning. But so when we turn up here, it makes sense to anyone who sits there and lifts that paper as to what it was we set out to achieve, how we're going to go about it, and then ultimately we've delivered it. Then it should be a timescale on it as well, so that it's not just left open-ended. I mean, some of these here, I mean, right at the very beginning, we've got 8 that are progressing as planned, 11 directions complete, and of those 11, a lot of them they're complete, but we've actually not met what was it we set out to do. So yeah, we completed it, but we didn't hit, we didn't get our strategic aim, so we haven't done it. So why it's green, I'm not really sure. So I think, again, we need to understand some of the information. If we're not hitting things, why aren't we hitting things, and what can we do different? And how do we get early notice that it's not going that way, so that we can change what we're doing in order to try and make sure we do it? Because if we issue a direction, there's a reason behind it. And there should be, as I say, what we're going to achieve. If we're not going to achieve that, we either say, oh, we'll just wipe it. Well, why do we issue direction in the first place? And we need to better manage and monitor these. Ian first, then Alan. David?
I really appreciate what you're saying, where you're taking this conversation, looking at what you just said, and that's probably the best. So even as looking at the directions that are complete, but maybe they've done it fully implemented the way we expect them, I think Data sharing was one that I brought up a number of occasions. If we put a simple timeline on that, that could be brought into fruition. But when we're looking at 2.1 and the recommendations, we're there going back to being, how do we get this resolved? How do we actually get to the point you're saying, like, okay, do we put a recommendation there, we undertake a review, bring it back to IGB. So just to kind of open up that as a thought process, when we get to that decision making, we can come back to that point.
Thank you.
Alan, thanks. I was just curious about the point you raised there around, I think a lot of people have mentioned it around how different the directions are. My understanding was around exploring an outcome, what you would like to achieve, and almost for the partnership to give you advice on this is how we can achieve it, and this is what good looks like, and this is what London looks like. Whereas some of the directions, and I guess it might just be the title, but I'm looking at 2-1-1-4 and home teams, for example. I can't imagine that around the table the direction was set up 8 home teams. But, okay. But then that's counter to, I think, what we're talking about, which is the group actually wants to achieve something. What do we want to achieve in terms of access in communities to healthcare, whatever it may be? And it's almost from the partnership to come back and say, we think we can achieve that by doing X, and here are the indicators of it.
And I think that's a very good point, because we clearly, when we've done that, we've had this thing in our head that, oh, we set up home teams to deliver that. But what the direction said is set up the home teams.
Yeah.
But it's not said what they intended to do.
Yeah.
So David, then Stephen, then yourself.
I think it was just your point about the rag rating chair. I wonder if we need to have 2 rag ratings for each direction, one around progress, one around impact. So as I read through that report, I can see that we invested what we said we would pass, but we've not seen the desired outcome from that. So it should be in terms of progress, green, or even political brag rather than brown. And I think Connie should probably be right because it's going to achieve what we need to achieve. So I wonder if that dual approach may be right.
I think that's a very good suggestion, yeah. Because interesting, I'm going to come on to page 16 in a bit. And I think there would be something in there that we could perhaps benefit, and that would be the contextual something, yeah. So Stephen Morgan.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies for not being there in person. I'm struggling to pick up some of the conversation, so if I repeat anything what people have said, please accept my apologies. This report's really helpful, and so is the discussion. But I'm just going to draw us back to the statutory guidance in relation to directions. They are binding directions for a health board, a local authority, or both, and they have to link to our strategic commissioning plan. And we also need a direction for every function that's been delegated. So I think we need to really think about what they look like. And in terms of the conversation that we've had today, there has to be specific focus on decisions made and also financial accountability. So our directions must link to the appropriate body, whether that be the health board, the health and social care partnership, the council, and which committee or subcommittee the specific performance reporting looks at. So Nicole mentioned, some of the work we're doing around social work, for example. Most of those staff, if not all of them, would be employed by the council, but that doesn't mean the health and social care partnership as the operational body doesn't scrutinise the performance. So I think our directions need to be clear in terms of what they are from a decision-making perspective, who made those decisions, what professional advice was given, the financial accountability, and also the performance reporting. And we do have to have one for each of the functions that are delegated in our scheme of delegation. So I think we need to concentrate on what the actual statutory guidance says in relation to this as well, because what we have in the list at the moment seems a little bit disjointed, if I'm honest, although the work that's been done by Kirsty and David and colleagues has brought clarity to it, well, as much clarity as we can expect given the background. So thanks for that.
No, thank you, Stephen. I think that's valuable, and just ask Nicole if it'd be worthwhile, and perhaps you can give us your view that you, I, and Nicole have a meeting to sort of look at what their statutory guidance and responsibilities are. And then we could have a look at how we could take that forward and make sure that we're getting everything mapped up, no gaps, yeah? Okay, thank you. Will.
Much of what I want to say has been said, but there's something for me about periodically testing the measures and the targets that have been set, because that the loss of context and how maybe annually they need to be reset in such a way that when we're asking a question, what's the outcome and what's the impact? Maybe we're just not measuring it, we're not seeing it because we haven't set the target and the measure right in the first place. And then link back to that, the RAG. So where we're seeing red, actually, maybe that's more amber, and where we're seeing green, sometimes that should be red because we're not actually measuring the impact or the outcome we were seeking at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that. I mean, I'd be reluctant to reset because that would mean that you could just constantly shift them. But I think that we need to again have that context, and there should be a change if there was a change of circumstances. So we set off to do ABC, there's a change of circumstances, and we can't hit one of those for whatever reason. Then we as a board should get that information so we understand it. And then if we need to react to that information, then that'll be one thing, and so perhaps adjust it on that basis. But I don't think an annual review to reset, but perhaps an annual review is definitely worthwhile. But again, I think it goes back to perhaps David's perspective of, how we're delivering what we said we would deliver. Is it delivering what do we deliver?
Yes, if I can just come back on that, I think we do need to challenge ourselves though whether the measures are actually telling us the information that's giving us the answer that we're looking for, because where there is, I've been pessimistic here, but where there is green, maybe we're not, maybe they weren't ambitious enough, or maybe actually we're missing something.
Yeah.
We just need to ask ourselves the question, are the measures right a year on, 2 years on, 5 years on?
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Nicole.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Chair and members, whether it would be helpful if we take away an action to bring back a paper just showing about that review, what the template looks like, what the process is, and then how we do measure, linking with both local authority and NHS about what they're already measuring, because we don't want to duplicate. But equally, we have got that annual performance report that's about the 9 national outcomes, and actually how are we mapping in the directions back to that, which is our unique space, is the IGIB in terms of what we're doing there. So I think it would be really helpful. And again, just remembering that actually it has been a journey of time, that things have, we've learned a lot over the last number of years. But equally looking at other partnerships and IGIBs in terms of what their process and approaches. I think what's key through the conversation is that discussion about the health and social care partnership and how they contribute, because it's how we make sure that things are defined that are operationally deliverable, and if not, why not? And that what is that is it ambitious enough? And for the first time, Kirsty took this report through health and social care leadership team as well, and the engagement around that table was really encouraging, like down to your chair. So I think it is potentially, I'm committing here, Kirsty, but bringing forward a bit of a paper, just a bit of refresh about how that directions process does work and how we implement that, using some learning across Scotland as well, because everybody does do it differently. So we can take the best.
Thanks, Nicole. Now, as I said, looking at page 16, it scares me because there is so much red on it that you just think, what the heck's happening? And it's to do with what was it? Integration, direction to constituent authorities to continue to carry out all health and social care functions, including acute hospitals. Where it read, no, it doesn't say why. It doesn't say why. It's quite wordy, but.
And I think that goes back to the statutory guidance that Stephen talked about, because this is an overarching function that we actually did. I think Alison will just agree that we used to have singular functions to go out, deliver primary care, dental, GP, but then it was then all brought into one, which makes that really, really broad. And how do you actually measure it? I don't actually think there's much. Actually did take this table out and kind of resent it, but nothing will be picked up. So I didn't want that out there because it doesn't look good. And I think that we need to talk about this one particularly and about those statutory functions as well.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful about how we use language and understand what you mean by it doesn't look good. But what we don't want to do is put the message out there. We're not going to put things in if it doesn't look good, because we have to confront what's there. But for example, total number of bed days lost to delayed discharge across Dumfries and Galloway during the month for all reasons of delay. 2,934 targets and 3, that just doesn't seem appropriate, right? Somehow, I don't know why. But equally, we've got some there that are good. A number of people seen during the month for new diagnostic scans. We're talking about 3,500 people almost. Mark.
I agree with a lot of the points there. First and foremost, I really welcome this report. I think it's really good for us to get clarity on where we are with the direction, particularly applying measures of success. I agree with Gwilym. I think on page 16, I think there's a bit of a miscommunication picture there with that rag stating there. I think when you read into the detail there, I think I'm working are actually amber as opposed to red. But I think also what would be really helpful for the IGB chair is all of these measures are they're all number based. I'd really like to start seeing something that was qualitative that shows actually what the value add to the patients and families we have within that space. And I know that's sometimes difficult to capture. I think equally is a huge measure of success or not to actually see how it's landed with the people who services are delivering.
Nicole?
Yeah, and I do wonder if it is that this board does have concerns about the number of red. If we do take that, just to look at it, because again, it is about being open and transparent.
Yeah.
But if we looked at the measure of instead of number of people seen in the month for TTG or number of people seen for a new outpatient appointment, what does that actually mean? What's the baseline of how many would be seen if we had to bring back a report with benchmarking that shows their performance against 18 weeks or a year, which is actually a meaningful target that we're held to with by the Scottish Government, that actually we could potentially take this table away and bring back a wee bit and circulate that as a separate item just to give that bit of context coming back so that actually that red can be assessed more appropriately in terms of meaningful targets, because some of the ones in this table are not what we use on a day-to-day basis operationally, nor is it what we report to the Scottish Government. And a lot of these are health related, and then when you go on, actually we don't have any RAG status because there's no target for some of the social work measures. So again, I don't think the table actually gives us a full reflection of what that direction is, because the social care element is not even RAG status, it's only the health ones. And as I said, the NHS board is amending its board report because I don't think those measures there are what we use operationally, nor are they what we report to the government currently.
I think the point you make there in relation to social care ones is perhaps something that we can pick up. It's the main with Stephen. And I do think that Mark said in relation to actual numbers would help, because sometimes percentages can be skewed by one or two individuals, depending on the number of the range of numbers that you have. But for example, the proportion of people diagnosed with cancer to begin treatment within 31 days, we're at 92%, target's 95%, so shown as amber. But I'd be interested to know the numbers there, because that gives it context. That could be one person. He's not likely to be, but it could be. So when you're that close, I think it does matter, and I think it is important. I think what we also need to do, though, is we need to be careful not to have too much information, so we end up with a table just of numbers that is hard to decipher. I think we need to look at what targets do we already have. And I think somebody said about not duplicating, but if we've already got measures within social work, within health, and we've got measures that we have to report, we need to try and align them as much as possible to minimise that duplication of effort. And I think that we should try and there's a big piece of work here, Kirsty.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So whether,
Well, that's right.
but that there is a lot of work to be done
Yeah.
on this, I think. But I think it's really important, and I think it's also where there are to be confirmed. I mean, there was one of the ones that I pointed out earlier. It's been completed, and there was no target set for it, but it's completed, and that just seems silly that we've set out a direction. There's no target for what we're going to achieve, but then we've completed it. So I think there's some really good information in here, and it's provoked a lot of conversation, which is good. But I think that we can do better, and we can get better indication of how well we're performing in IGB. Anyone else? Super, thanks, Adore. That was an interesting conversation. Okay, moving on to item number 8, recruitment process. Sorry?
When you come back to look at the recommendations and decision, but we're
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, okay.
Comments.
So recommendations, we've been asked to approve, take assurance for IGB directions for gross report on the delivery of legal directions issued by the Integration Joint Board, together approval to progress status as below, and then approve the new reporting structure as appendix 1. Well, I think what we're saying under is, if I've misinterpreted this, that we're sort of partially approving it. But we think that there's changes to be made in order to enhance.
I think we need to, I don't think either of those, we were approving. I think we need to go back and do some refinement of the reporting structure and bring that back into the September IGB. That would be my recommendation.
You captured that. Yeah.
Looking at that there, I would rewrite that as the Integration Joint Board is asked to, and we take assurance approval, happy enough if it's there, so we do, but if we're doing away with the second bullet point, changing that to get an updated report to then take the review of these directions. The September committee, that's absolutely spot on, I think, as well. I would make one small comment. So I've been here since the conception of the Integration Joint Board, Community Health Social Care part of it before that as well. These are 19 going back to these initial directions. Recent Galloway was seen in the Forerunner in Scotland. It's been the exemplar. All of them, they're beating the path. I know at the point of, okay, we've done it, could have done it better. As you always do, it's all about lessons learned. I think that's where we're changing. Because the Recent Galloway definitely seen as the exemplar of Scotland when it came to this. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to look at it now, reevaluate. We do need to see that operational impact, come back to a strategic overhead and make decisions at that level. But if we do that, see that review coming back to September, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, you've got that, I think. Everyone else all right with that? Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, moving on to item number 8, recruitment process for Chief Officer and Chief Operating Officer. Members were updated in April on the interim arrangements for the Chief Officer and Chief Operating Officer, and confirmed Pamela James will bring back a formal report. And Pamela's here today to assist with us. So,
yeah,
Pamela.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is really just setting out the process that will be followed to recruit to this post on a permanent basis. I've linked in with the authority colleagues and with health colleagues to ensure that the process that we're taking forward is in agreement with both parties. The job description is currently being submitted for evaluation nationally through the health process. Local authorities confirmed that it doesn't need to be evaluated through their processes because of because this is sitting under the IGB. So as soon as we've got the outcome from the national evaluation, then we'll be able to progress with commencing the recruitment process. I am expecting that outcome imminently because the committee met last week, and it's just a case of waiting on the outcome for that. Process that we're following very much aligned to processes that have been followed recently, both by local authority colleagues and by health, and we will work closely together with this process. The detail is in the paper. I'm appreciating it, not wanting to go through everything, but happy to take any questions. The post, whilst the process will be followed, the IGB as with the interim post, still has to confirm the appointment, and we will ensure that there's an extraordinary IGB panel pulled together following that assessment centre and then the final interview process to confirm the appointment.
Okay, thanks, Pamela. Any questions for Pamela? Ian?
Thank you very much. So looking at it, it's really quite interesting. So council right at the moment has been through quite a bit of this. And I thought, for me, personally, I felt there could have been more involvement with the Integration Joint Board, being part of the interview panel itself. Probably looking at the final day, 3 days. So the council undertake a similar process, like I say, but the council is actually the interview panel. I'm not saying we should do that by any means. I think it should be joined, but if there was scope for there, I thought it should be at least the chair and vice chair on that panel. If it could be brought beyond that, I would advocate that.
No problem.
For example, I suppose when they come to decision, the chair maybe make.
Okay, thank you. Resource implication says the resource required to support this process is the estimate to be £8,000. But clearly there is a resource implication in appointing a chief officer and chief operating officer. So do we have any indication as to what that potential resource might be?
So do you mean over and above the recruitment cost?
Yeah,
My Pete can keep me right here, but the post is generally paid by Home Health. And that's a conversation that I think we'll to see if there's any sort of contribution to that, but generally sits with Health. Katie, do you want to?
Katie?
Yeah, I suppose because of the arrangements that we made in our scheme to have the dual roles with the Chief Operating Officer for the NHS and the Chief Officer for the IJB, there's no additional cost. There would be additional cost. Pam talked about the process going through the national evaluation, and if that post comes out at a higher grade, there may be some additional costs that we'll not need to have consideration. But because we don't, because we have that dual role in my head, there's no resource implication other than what we're already incurring.
Okay, let me bounce that back to you then, because that is presuming that we are going to appoint from within our own existing organisations then. Is that what we're saying? Because we're going to, within the papers here, it says we're going to advertise widely to get the best potential candidate. And clearly there would be a cost if we employ someone who's not within our own organisations over and above what we are currently expending.
So just come back on that point, whether we appoint internally or externally, it makes no difference to the financial risk associated with that. And obviously Nicole, if she was not appointed, would go back to her post as Deputy Operating Officer within Health, and others would remain in their existing post. So I don't know, it doesn't make any difference, Andy.
Okay, thanks for that. No, just clarification from me. Thank you. Any other questions, anyone? Okay. So we'll look at the recommendations. We're asked to approve the recruitment process as outlined for the Chief Officer and Chief Operating Officer. Ian?
Would it be possible to make an amendment to that particular point, and that just
Which one, sorry?
when you just outlined the recruitment process outlined to the Chief Operating Officer, because I'm looking at Appendix 1 there, beyond that, looking at interview day, I think that's what we really agree on. That's wrong at that interview day. You said we can add the fact that some voting members can be, I think the chair and vice chair should at least the option to be there. If it could be extended beyond that, even better. An option to be on the interview panel.
So you mean within Appendix A, just to include what you suggested there?
Yeah, fine, on the interview days. No, be the assessment centre anyway. Through that, the love information is sent to them. Some voting members should be.
I'm willing to do that. Okay, we get that amended.
Thank you.
Okay, so approve the recruitment process outlined to recruit that to include the recommendation suggested by Ian. To approve the recruitment process can commence. To agree to an extraordinary meeting when required to approve the appointment of the Chief Officer, Chief Operating Officer in line with Section 10. The Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Act 2014, which stipulates the following.
Sorry, that deputy following should be there, that should be
Right,
that.
okay. Ignore that one. And to agree resource to utilise dollars utilised by local authorities to support the assessment centre process. Everyone okay with that? Okay, folks, thank you very much. Thank you, Pamela. Moving on to item 9, strategic commissioning plan. 2025 to 2028, and we've got Kerry, who's just joined us, strategic plan commissioning manager. Has joined the IJB to go through the plan for members, so I'll hand over to you, I can, Kerry.
Thank you very much. It was a really good timing just to put a minute in my mouth before I came in here. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Kerry Lucy, one of the strategic planning and commissioning managers, and I'm here today to provide you with an update on our proposed plans for the review of the IJB's strategic commissioning plan. Let me begin with why we're doing this. There is a legislative requirement for integration authorities to review their strategic commissioning plan at least once in every relevant period. And the relevant period for the current strategic commissioning plan is from the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2025. and it's also a legislative requirement that the review be carried out with the involvement of the strategic planning. I'm here today to seek views from the Integration Joint Board on a proposed two-stage review process. Stage one would involve a light touch review, which would take place during 2024 and into 2025, which would result in a new plan being in place as required for the period 2025 to 2028 by the 1st of April 2025. Stage two of the review process would then involve a more detailed review early in the life of the new plan, recognising that some of the information that would be required for a more in-depth review will not be available in 2024-2025. A paper on this topic has already been discussed by the Health and Social Care Partnership Leadership Group and by the Strategic Plan Delivery and Commissioning Committee, and both groups were supportive of the approach being proposed within this paper. A detailed timeline is included within your paper, and I'm happy to quickly just run through some of the highlights of this to give you more detail on the proposed process. So we plan to have a workshop with members of the Strategic Planning Group, the members of the Integration Joint Board, and with members of the Leadership Group to remind people, particularly those that perhaps were not members of those groups during the development of the current plan, to remind them of the background and the content of the current strategic commissioning plan, agree the process for the light touch review, and ensure that all the information that they require is available to them. The review of the vision, the model of care, and the strategic commissioning intentions would be set out along with the methodology mentioned in the appendices of the paper that you have ahead of a second workshop, which would look at arriving at a recommendation for the Integration Joint Board as to whether the plan requires to be retained as it is, revised in some small way, or replaced in full. Based on the outcome of that second workshop, a recommendation of whether to retain, revise, or replace the current strategic commissioning plan will be made to the IJB at their meeting in September. Any changes that were required to be made to the plan would be made, and a period of engagement or consultation would take place between September and December to ensure the views of those who were involved in developing the original plan, and as well as others, are sought. The complexity of the engagement or consultation will reflect the extent of the changes that are to be made. It could, for example, be as simple as a two-question questionnaire if there aren't any significant changes to be made. A final draft of the plan will then go to the Strategic Planning Group, the Strategic Plan Delivery and Commissioning Committee, as well as the Health and Social Care Partnership Leadership Group in January and February, before coming to the Integration Joint Board for final approval in March next year. The plan would therefore be in place for the next period from 2025 to 2028 by the required 1st of April 2025. Stage two of the two-stage approach advocates a fuller review early in the life of the new plan, once the full suite of information is outlined in your paper is in. The paper before you therefore asks that the Integration Joint Board discuss this proposal and endorse the two-stage approach which is laid out in the paper. Well, that's helpful, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. I think that's helpful. Questions for them? You clearly covered it all. Well,
Yeah, just as I said, do you think it is very helpful because the census data is just about to come out, and it's going to be an added here, but it's going to be released in kind of short bursts, isn't it? The census data is going to be over this kind of year, so it kind of feels like it would be the wrong thing to do to try and rush it and do it all in a day. So it feels like a good approach to kind of meet the legislative requirements, but also to then look at a broader review of it when you've got that regular data available.
no, I agree. I mean, it sounds quite inclusive, so everyone's going to have the opportunity to make a contribution, and the workshops, I think, is also a good way of getting people together to sort of knock things about, so we can capture what comes from that. So, no, I'm more than happy with that. Anyone else got any particular comments? No, that was easy, wasn't it?
That's great. Thank you very much.
I'll just go through the recommendations. So the recommendations are to approve the two-stage process to the approach to review of current strategic commissioning plan set out within the paper. No revised timeline for two-stage approach to the review of the safety. Everyone? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item number 10, financial update, finance, Katie.
Yeah, just I suppose a couple of things. I'll keep it fairly brief today. And my first comment is apologies for not having a written report. The timing of this meeting was earlier in June than it has been in previous years, and because of the year-end position and the close off of both the NHS and the local authority, we don't have a final set of numbers. So I would normally bring you like a year-end outturn position, and I just don't have that yet. And I'll take that formally into the next IJB meeting, and I'll have that report ready for the timing of our next finance and performance and quality meeting, so I can take that to that meeting if people would prefer. Although we haven't closed things off formally, we do have draft numbers that we're using at the moment to prepare the accounts, and we're setting things up because we've got an IJB audit, risk and governance meeting on the 18th of June. So we'll share around a draft of the accounts as part of that process. There's nothing that I'm aware of that should be any kind of surprises in terms of the year-end position. The NHS board has received a share of brokerage, of 23 million, which a share of that will be passed across to the IJB as part of the closing off of the deficit position, and the local authority has closed off the social work numbers, and we will have a level of reserves brought forward, which we had planned for. So again, I'll bring back more detail of that as we move forward. Just moving into 24-25 in terms of the new year, we're obviously now into June. As an IJB, we agreed the budget on the 16th of April. We don't at this stage have an updated forecast. We wouldn't normally have that until the end of Q1, and I plan to bring an update to the September meeting around that. There are, however, a number of kind of risks floating around in the system at the moment that I think the IJB should be aware of. Obviously, we're paying the increased rates for social care staff up to £12, and that was part of the budget agreement. We're paying that on account as per the direction from government, but there is a risk around care at home rates as part of the Scotland Excel negotiations that are beyond what we have budgeted for. So we may need to have a meeting possibly between now and September, a conversation around that in terms of what that means financially, and we'll have some engagement with the MD as chair around that. The other thing just to note, obviously there are savings plans developed, and Nicole and I have been working with both finance teams within the NHS and the local authority to work through how we take forward the kind of monitoring and detail around that, and where we're at in terms of delivering on those savings plans. And again, I was planning, because we've got the finance committee, I think it's the second week in July, to bring an update of that as part of that process, so you get a bit of oversight about how that's going and the detail associated with that. Obviously, the other thing just to note is neither pay uplifts for local authority or NHS staff have been agreed, and discussions are kind of ongoing around that at the moment. We know both from a local authority and also starting to kind of have those discussions from the NHS. And again, we've not received specific funding for that. And again, until that's closed off, I won't be able to assess the scale of financial risk. The other one in terms of the NHS piece is the Agenda for Change non-pay arrangements. And whilst we have had a level of funding identified through a letter that came out from Scottish Government in April-May time, we know that based on our financial assessment, is nowhere near enough to fund that. So I'll need to bring back a wee bit more detail on that. The other thing that Chief Finance Officers have been really pushing government around is to get our allocations out earlier. So if you remember, particularly within the NHS, a lot of the allocations don't come out until second quarter of the year, so it makes it really difficult in terms of planning for certainty around that. We have been advised that we'll get 80% of our allocations out by the end of June, and it's more likely to be about the second week in July before we see detail around that. And again, I think you probably will want to have a bit of an understanding about where our risks sit around that, because I am still I'm still a wee bit nervous until we've got a number of those allocations confirmed, and there are some quite significant numbers within that, you know, all of our primary care improvement funding and all of the additional funding that we've had in previous years. So again, Chair, apologies, that's a kind of a verbal update, but you will get a written update pretty soon.
Thanks, Matt. Katie. As always, challenges on the financial front, but then we'll get any questions for Katie in relation to that. No, nobody at all. Katie, that's another one. I think they fall asleep after the directions report. Okay, thanks for that, Katie. We'll move on then to agenda item number 11. Proposal for the annual performance report for 23-24. Ananda's joined us and it sets out the proposal, so I'll hand it. Are you comfortable there?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Amanda.
So we're proposing to do the IJB annual performance report in the same style as last year. We changed the style of it last year and it was well received, so we would wish to just basically update the same content. We've got a requirement to publish our annual report by the 31st of July every year. So we have a timeline that we have proposed within this paper, which will require for the IJB to be comfortable that the two committees, the performance and quality committee, to be looking through the first draft, and for the strategic planning delivery commissioning committee to approve the final draft, because we cannot get the draft and final version through to an IJB because of timing. So we are looking for you to delegate authority to those committees to keep that timeline running smooth so that we can hit our legislative requirements. And we would probably propose that all IJB members are invited to those committees should they wish to take part in any discussions to enable them to have that input. Essentially, the guidance hasn't changed. The contents still need to be the same, but we are looking for you to approve the timeline. And then we propose that once we publish that final draft with all the figures in, that we take the annual performance report round to the strategic planning group and also to the council and the NHS board in order to have some reflections that can come back to the IJB. And at some point we'll have a workshop to discuss what we want to do on the back of the findings. So that's it in a nutshell.
No, that sounds fairly straightforward. Thoughts, comments, everyone? Yeah.
And I was really covered at 4.3, but if that was changed to all IJB voting members, will be invited to attend the committee. Thereafter,
No, I do think it's important that it's opened up to everyone. It shouldn't just be restricted, but clearly we'll have to do it in that way because of the deadline of the end of July. But I do think it's important that as wide an audience as possible and they will contribute. Any other comments? No, yeah, no, that seems fairly good. I mean, obviously everyone's happy with what we did last year, so it's never going to be controversial. Then it works and people pick up on it as long as you have an easy read.
Okay, we were proposing that we didn't do easy read this year, but nothing should someone request it.
Okay.
In the same way we do with other languages. Just for the use of resource, because it's a governance document essentially, we thought it was best to reserve our resource around easy read for the extensive amounts of public engagement that we're going to be doing for various projects. So
what are you saying, that an easy read will be available but only in certain circumstances?
If people request it, but we haven't had a lot of hits that were not internal officers on our web pages for the easy read versions that we published last year. I'm just not convinced it's the most effective way to communicate with people through the performance report, whereas we've got so many engagement opportunities coming over this next year. That's where I think we have only limited resource for easy read. So I know we don't want to ration it.
Tiny part of one officer's.
Say again, sorry.
Tiny part of one officer's role. It's specified within the rules and add-ons.
Right.
So it's incredibly small, so these are support. I think as Amanda says, responding to requests is a sensible way to do it. You do need to prioritise what's his capacity to work on.
Yeah, not a problem. I don't have an issue with that, but I think I'm glad I raised it because ultimately we need to understand why we're not doing it, and if that's why we're not doing it, then that's not an issue. But yeah, okay. That's that.
Thank you.
Recommendations. Sorry.
I'm just wondering.
You wait till all the way, don't you?
I was just wondering, Amanda, is it possible to share the draft around the IGB members can just like holiday time and I will get to the final meeting. So if the draft could be shared and people could put absolutely comments and feedback into, would that be okay?
Yeah, virtual circulation is not.
Education Joint Boards asked to discuss and approve a plan and timescale for 23-24 IJB annual performance report. To delegate authority to IJB strategic plan and delivery and commission committee to approve publication of the final draft. We're happy to accept those.
Amendment 4.3, would that be okay?
Say again, sorry.
Amendment to 4.3.
Amendment to 4.3.
All the IGB members will be.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, will be, yes, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, thanks, Amanda. Now we're moving on to item 12. Right Care, Right Place. Get David Rowland with us. He's going to present an update on progress that's been made with Right Care, Right Place programme since our last meeting in March. As colleagues know, we have a pre-election period for the general election, which commenced on the 30th of May. During this time, we must be careful not to share anything in the public domain that could be interpreted as politically sensitive or which may compete with candidates for the attention of the public. Given this meeting has been recorded and will be published on our website, this presentation will therefore focus on this progress that has been made with Right Care, Right Place and the process that the team is working through. These timescales for reporting back to the IJB. And ask members to keep the questions focused on process and timescales, as they will not be able to answer questions on detailed substance or merits of any of the models. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Chair. And we thought it was important to get an update. Yeah, as you've already said, involved in discussions around the substance models themselves, any feedback and consultation stage. Could I get a pen? Could I ask you to remove Katie from the screen? Just
Katie, ask the question.
Just could David move a bit closer to the owl, because he is probably one of the more patchy voices in the room, shall we say?
You need to.
So if I speak up like that, does that work for you, Katie?
That's better.
Yeah, excellent. I'm dead shouting in the room now, so the room doesn't take offence. Amber, can you give me 3 quick please? I wanted to start this presentation by reminding members what Right Care, Right Place is about. And we don't really all right. Shall we just take out a slideshow mode and just use the slides? So I wanted to remind. Okay. Yeah. Oh, there we go. I wanted to remind members what Right Care, Right Place was about, because I think we often use it as shorthand for our review of the community beds that we started off way back in 2021, and it came to my teams in 2022. Speak up. Yes, shout again. So, sorry.
I can't see the message.
Right. Okay. So, keep it right back. So, Right Care, Right Place is about so much more than bed-based care. Bed-based care is really important. It's about how we organise our community services, how we transform our community services, how we create those fully integrated home teams that wrap around the needs of the individual and take away some of the bureaucracy that often caused delay in the past. And it's about how we get the best out of our very limited care support capacity, understanding that we will never create sufficient capacity to meet all we need, that we have to do things very differently. And I'm delighted to say that actually our collaborative approach to care and support at home was recognised nationally at the Scottish Care Awards just last month. So it's part of a much wider programme. The elements of that programme all fit together, because actually how we deliver, provide care and support at home is linked to how we make use of community bed bases and how our own teams support people and have the potential to step them up or step them down from community bed-based care. It's central to their role and function as well. The fourth element that we have started to do now is to begin to explore how we can provide more local care within our small community settings that avoid unnecessary travelling with those areas. And that's the bit process that we're focused on today. Moving on again, Amber. Before we do that, let's just take stock of exactly where we are. Remember? So you as an IGIB did take a decision back in September last year to commission flexible beds, provide step up, step down care, provide palliative and end of life care within either a care home setting or within supported housing settings. Next click, Amber. We have already begun that commissioning and procurement process. We've made really good progress through that. And Gary Sheehan, who Steph Mottram's team, has been absolutely at the centre of that for us. And expressions of interest are now in those beds, and we hope to be able to commission and procure those very, very soon and see them start to come online over the course of the summer. At the same time, Gary and the commissioning team have been having conversations with other providers, care homes within our local area, and that medium-term commissioning plan for care homes that you agreed as part of that decision-making process in September last year is now beginning to shape up with expressions of interest coming in for the expansion of some care homes in the local area. Next up. At the same time, my team, along with Steph's team and the communications team with Gordon colleagues, have been out engaging, as we know, with local communities about those services that they currently have to travel for, that they think can be delivered in a different way, and how we can make best use of our local teams and our local facilities to support that. Next click, please, Amber. So back in March, you absolutely agreed that we should move to the formal appraisal of those options that we've worked up with communities and to begin consultation on those. All of this is running to plan. It's all looking good. Next click. We did complete the option appraisal, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the process that we've been through. We did complete that as planned in the month of May, and consultation started as we planned it would start the 17th. We do, of course, have a little bit of slippage. We have a little bit of slippage because the election's been called, and we will be delayed in terms of when we complete the consultation. I'll give you some detail on that towards the end of the presentation. One more, for example. That does mean there will be a delay in submitting our final findings to you as a board. We had intended to bring those to you at the end of September, and we want to have a bit of a conversation with you today as to when we might bring those forward. That all stems from that decision you took back in September last year, but I want to remind you, thank you, if you just give me 7 clicks, that'd be great. I want to remind you of a huge amount of other work that is still to come forward on the back of that decision you took as a board, because you set a really clear direction back then. We have to bring forward a plan for how we're going to deliver and implement the rehabilitation framework for Scotland. And we do that using the facilities that we have across the county and the teams that we have. It's really good work underway just now, led by Lynn Mann, and there'll be a plan for the earliest possible opportunity. We also still have to develop a medium-term plan for how we want to see flexible beds used in the longer term to meet that growing need we know exists. And it's important that we evaluate year one first and come forward with that plan to you probably next year with an idea of how we might expand that programme if it's as successful as we all believe it will be. We also need to define that future role of care homes. Colleagues will remember in the room, Jim Gatherum made a plea for us to add that in as a recommendation, that we define what we want care homes to do in the future, and that we determine a market facilitation plan as to how we begin to transition to that new role and where it sits alongside the future of care village model or extra care house model. We also agreed that we wanted to build on the really good participation and engagement work we've done through Right Care, Right Place, and we wanted to build that into our norms to how we have conversations with local people and local communities about what matters to them, and how we use that to shape our future models of delivery into the future. We did agree there were some key enablers that we had to look at, so how we review the integrated community equipment and adaptation services, but also how we bring forward plans for digital pace and scale that again begin to address some of those deficits in capacity that we know we have. And also absolutely bring forward plans as to how we're going to review assessment plans to make sure that we are putting the strengths that people have at the forefront of those assessments, that we seek to understand how they can use the resources to them to best effect to meet their desired outcomes, and what it is that we need to support with in terms of that gap between their strengths and assets and what their needs actually are. So we've still got a lot of work to do and to report back to you as an IGIB on to see your agreement on and to issue directions on in terms of how we move this forward. I thought it was important to give that context just to remind folks that this is one part. Okay, one more click, please. So, where are we? We have undertaken option appraisal at 4 sites where inpatient facilities have been temporarily closed within our Scottish hospitals. So at Thornhill, at Moffat, at Coopery, and at Newton Stewart, next up, please, Amber. The people who were involved in that process, the appraisers who were involved in that process, included people from those local areas who use our health and social care services, people who deliver our health and social care services within those local areas, and people who manage those services as well. Next up. We asked each of those participants to rank 5 criteria that we would use to assess the benefits of each of the options that we presented to you back in March. So we asked them to consider the extent to which they would fit with the strategic direction that's been set, the extent to which they would be sustainable in the future, the extent to which they would be safe, effective, and of care, the extent to which they offer utility in terms of making best use of the facilities within local people, and the time frame, and deliver within 20 months, the detail of those options and begin to deliver services at the local level. Slide. So, in weighting those criteria, this is where it gets a little bit technical, this is very processing. In weighting those criteria, we asked each person to rank those 5 criteria from most important to least important. We converted those into scores, and we created a total criterion score for each criterion. We then divided that by the total score to give us the percentage that we would apply to each criteria that we created the weighted benefits. And again. So each group then scored the 6 options. 6 options are as you saw them back in March, so ranging from status quo, where we are providing a limited number of services from those sites, through developing a range of services at the status quo cost of the one community hub. Then the inpatient reinstatement of inpatient facilities are transferred to community ownership and proposed at the site. Bullet point, thanks, Amber. And again, please. We asked them to score those 6 options using a 10-point scale. So what would be absolute perfection, as it's described up there, could hardly be better, through to a score of 1 if it could hardly be worse. So basically ranking each option against each criterion. Next slide. So the total weighted benefit score calculated for each of the options using this here. So we took the median score for each criterion for each option, and we multiplied that by the percentage weight assigned to each criterion to give us the weighted benefit score for each criterion, and all that together to give us a total weighted benefit score for each option within each local area. The reason we chose the median score is because it eliminates the outliers and focuses you in where the majority of people have their score. Next slide. Again, please. We have conducted sensitivity analysis around the scoring, so we've looked at how the distribution of scores has been applied to each criterion and for each option. We've looked at the pattern of scoring for individuals and looked at the differences in results by stakeholder group. Next bullet point. That will all be presented to you in full as part of the final report that comes forward. and to make sure that you're fully informed to make a decision on the future model for each of these local affairs. That will be presented alongside the financial implications of each model and the workforce implications of each model and what we hear back in consultation. And again, please. So, moving on to consultation. As I said, we were ready to go, and we did indeed go live on the 17th of May. To get us there, Rod and his team placed a consultation notice in newspapers, commencing the 10th of May. Next bullet point, please, Andy, and just run through to the screen. So, consultation launched 17th of May. The materials, including the survey that been developed, and all the option pages like this, were all uploaded to the website on the morning of the 17th of May. Meetings were scheduled for 15 sites across Dumfries and Galloway, and we started to publicise those. Staff meetings were also scheduled across our community sites, and we had agreed to meet with GPs at cluster level and across the 4 GP clusters in Dumfries and Galloway. We had also scheduled meetings with the professional advisory groups and professional committees. Next bullet point, and then next again. Thank you. And we had also scheduled briefings with MPs, MSPs and elected members, both at the start of the consultation period and for the close of the consultation period, so we can do that briefing that we always do. Then the general election was called on the 22nd of May. At that point, we had our first MP and MSP briefing session, and we were due to be at our first public event in Dumfries on the 27th of May. Next slide, please, Amber. Just next point as well, please. And the next again. So, as soon as the election was called, Rod and his team sought advice and guidance from Health Improvement Scotland, and we awaited the guidance from Scottish Government. The initial review of that confirmed that as our consultation had commenced, technically it could continue, but we would not be allowed to promote materials or promote consultation events, and indeed that we shouldn't be taking, we should be having consultation events with the public around any matters that were reserved for cross-border issues. Rod and I had a long discussion around this, and then presented our case to Nicole around this in terms of health is a very live subject in the campaigns that have been launched at that point in time. And there's a lot of political activity around health in the local media, and specifically around the regulatory place work at that point in time as well. The decision was therefore taken to reschedule the public events, the staff meetings, the MP, MSP events, and the engagement with the professional advisory groups. And just bring up the final piece for now. Thank you. So where we are now, staff meetings will recommence immediately after the election, just after the 4th of July. The reason for that is that we will know when our staff are on leave, and we'll be able to make accommodation for that, and we'll be able to re-engage with them after their leave as well. However, we did not want to restart the public engagement sessions during a school holiday period when a number of people who want to engage with us might not be available. So we are now going to recommence those public meetings week commencing the 19th of August. And we are moving from a 7-week programme of public meetings to a 5-week programme of public meetings. So that's going to be 3 a week. And I cannot emphasise enough what impact that's going to have. Few staff that actually deliver these sessions for us. It's going to be a massive ask, not just in terms of running a session from 3 to 7 and engaging with the public as they come through the door, but the travel time involved with that. So it's going to be really intense. We're going to have to capture lots of information, and we're going to have to analyse that information as well. So a lot of work to be done in that 5-week period. We are still aiming to conclude the consultation on the 22nd of September now. So really tight timescale for us, huge ask of our teams, and I cannot emphasise enough the impact this will have. So I would encourage anyone who wishes to come along and see these events to come along, not just to get assurance, because I've always said in the past, it's about getting assurance that the process is robust, and I think it's really important you as IJB members are assured by that, but I think actually to lend your support to the staff who are directly involved. So I think it would be hugely helpful. Next slide, please. And just bring up the first few bullet points, please. Thank you. So the original plan, as I said at the start, was to bring findings to the IGIB in 24th September with the consultation. Put it 7th September, that is no longer my option. The next IGIB is scheduled for the 17th of December, but we are critically aware that our staff who are currently deployed to other areas are awaiting an outcome from this. So they have certainty over what a future model within local areas is going to look like and what that means for them. Equally, I want an answer to this. We've already heard some frustrations back. The people are unhappy that the consultation is being extended in the way that it is. What the outcome is going to be from the IGIB. So should the IGIB be minded to schedule another meeting in its calendar or to reschedule its calendar, then we would recommend a meeting in late October would be ideal for us. 29th of October would be perfect. And that does give us time to analyse the feedback that we've received during the consultation period, to seek the views from the professional advisory groups. I think that's absolutely key. And also to share those findings with the leadership group and board management team on the way back to IGIB for the decision. It gives us time to brief MPs, NSPs and library members as we would always want to do at the end of the consultation period. Next slide, please. Almost there. Oh, we are almost there. Perfect. Could you skip a slide? I don't think that I'm taking it. I don't know what I was expecting the last slide to look like, but it wasn't that. That's fine. Happy to take any questions or comments. I hope that's in some way here.
No, thank you, David. I think set the context again because it has been running quite a while, so it's just good to refresh people's minds, and so we're retain our focus on what it is it's all about. Any questions for David? Anyone?
It's not really a question, but it's just that it's about the date in October, that second week of school holidays, and I just wonder in terms of it's really important for people to be here, and I'm just thoughtful how that might impact. I'm pretty sure that
there is a half time run about October something.
I'll check it. I'll just check it in my diary just now, but I'm pretty sure it is that.
And I think just one kind of key message as well is just the fact that the online materials are still live, and just make sure that we're promoting that is still. Well, we're not promoting. Sorry, but the message is sorry that the material is still live online.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Consultation is continuing. You're absolutely right, and that's a really important message to get out there. Consultation is not stopped. So anyone who wishes to engage with those materials, and I'm not promoting them, anyone who wishes to can. The pre-election materials confirmed that they were there. We had a number of responses already, so people were engaging with them. Anyone who does engage with them and completes the survey during this period, those results will be included in the accounts. So absolutely, consultations.
I think basically what we're saying there is if someone approaches you and said, "Oh, they've stopped the consultation," advise them that the online material is still available. However, it's not for us to go out and say, "Have you done it?" So it's just a case of take a look back in relation to that. I've got a number of questions as I always do. David, you put up two slides. First one is the green arrow, and the second one is the grey one. Are those chronological? Do they have to happen in right? Okay. So it's just a list of the things that we've got to do, and then that. One of the things that I'm wondering about is care and repair housing. I think has got quite a bit to impact or to influence the right care, right place, because we've had conversations about the best place for people to recuperate and to retain their independence is home. So I didn't see any mention of housing at all. I do think it's something that we as an IGB should perhaps be discussing if not trying to influence as a means of the right care, right place thing. So perhaps it's obviously for something somewhere down the line, and it can repair because the council invest money in that again about trying to adaptations and whatever, and adaptations was one of the things that you have on your list. You also had a list of people who are engaged and the stakeholders. Right, saying that there's been less engagement with some of the staff groups. They're perhaps not engaged as readily as.
So certainly in the early part of the place, some of our staff meetings weren't particularly well attended, but that was because in those areas have been deployed elsewhere. So for instance, when I went to Kilkenny, we did not have a well attended staff event, but the staff who previously been in Kilkenny had engaged in Castle Douglas because that in that area was not tested. So we have had some site visits where things has been going, you're absolutely right, but I think the staff are engaging with it suits them. And I'm also confident that Gary is in the way that
Would anyone have any issues with us calling another meeting in October?
Sorry, David, I'm sure you're going to try that this week before, it's 2 weeks before that the school holidays, so.
Okay, because I do think it's quite important. It's a really important topic, and there's a lot of communities in relation to this, and as you said, staff and communities want to see this continue. It's disappointing that we're not able to deal with it as proposed in September, but I'm sure we're going to have other things to discuss this time. So that being the case, can we, yeah?
It's similar to your point. I'll bring it up to the consultation process, but I want to just mention it now. Because I know David, with acutely aware in regards to, you spoke about 18 adaptations. So that's delegated through the IGB. That's private sector. We've got registered social landlords. We're doing a very little influence over that at all. What housing stuff that are now devolved, and how can we actually affect and influence them? So that's kind of an effect here. So my question would be, remember, right? How will this, and it's a strategic issue, we can't, if we had control, I'm not advocating, if we had control of it, we'd be able to prioritise, put everything together more neatly, easier, simpler. But it's that conversation for me will definitely come up through the consultation process. That'll be part of mine, IGB as an IGB, strategic housing. Potential issue that says whether it's easy adaptations, which will affect bedlock and everything beyond this year. But I've got this with consultation.
So when you issued your 8 directions last September, you also issued recommendations, one of which was that officers from the Health and Social Care Partnership should become involved in the strategic housing needs assessment and then the next strategic housing plan, and even through to your invite that session over it. Thank you. And that was incredibly helpful for me, and I was delighted that the consultants were leading that strategic housing review reached out and engaged with myself to define quite clearly what we think about needed in terms of extra care housing and specialist housing in particular. So I think we're beginning to set the direction around that, and we have now much better council housing colleagues. I know those connections are made for us now, and need to build on. So I think we can take the decisions from the IGB and through that officer group feed that into those discussions, so we are seeing those plans get involved in housing developments in the future.
Thanks. I think it's something that we as an IGB should pick up at some point in the future and talk about that from a strategic point of view, how we get better involved.
Thank you. Fiona.
Hiya. First thing, I was just to say I've shared on the chat there a report that was released last week that might be of interest to the board and relevant to this, David, is the Long-Term Care Commission, chaired by Henry McLeish, because a lot of the recommendations, is specifically one of the recommendations, is around alternative approaches to long-term care. So it was just really to bring that to your attention, and I don't know if you're able to share. I'm just really interested in the response from care homes in terms of the right care, right place, for the intermediate beds. I think I've frozen. Oh,
No, I can.
No, do you hear me?
Just for you, David.
Yeah.
Amber, could we circulate that link for? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Fiona, I can't talk about the detail because it's still commercial in confidence
Yeah,
just now.
absolutely.
But what I would say is that I shouldn't go with echo this. We've been really pleased with the level of interest that has come forward. And really pleased with the spread of interest we have across the county as well.
Yeah, it was my
So
second question.
I can't say much more than that, but
No, that I totally appreciate that. I was just interested in general, kind of. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? So I think that was very informative there and good to get that context again. That there's no recommendations from that, really just an update for members. It looks like Elizabeth's not with us right at the moment. We've been running for almost 2 hours. What, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Comfort break.
Elizabeth on her way across.
Is she?
Yeah, but
So-
she'll probably be another 10, 15 minutes.
So if we take 10 minutes and people can toilet break and.
if you, so I was, and but I couldn't.
Well, your name's on the paper, but
I know.
I've noticed that Liz is off and she
Yes,
shares the follow for it. If you're happy to carry on with David, then
I'm not happy to take it too far.
if you're comfortable.
But no, I'm happy. I'm happy to introduce it. I think if there's any detailed questions, what I would say is if I introduce it, we can perhaps have those good questions. Because it'll be at that point, she can then answer if it's asked.
Can I just say it's not Liz's fault, we've rattled through today, so yeah.
Okay, so we've heard from Liz around this table before as part of the advocacy plan development. And this is a statutory requirement. We've agreed to do this jointly with our local partners, and Liz has been working on this now for the past months or so. What we have in front of us is a detailed advocacy plan that responds directly to the mental welfare recommendations.
Can you speak up there?
So what we have in front of us is a detailed advocacy plan for Dumfries and Galloway that responds directly to the Mental Welfare Commission's recommendations and has been subject to really good participation and engagement in its development. I think, certainly when I read the paper and reviewed the paper before it came here, I think it meets the requirements, it meets our statutory obligations in terms of creating a support that people with more complex needs require and recommend it to the IGNB for today. But as I say, if colleagues have any detailed questions, any concerns about this at all, then we'll be happy to gather those together and we can get Liz to respond to that when she arrives. Probably don't want to say too much more than that, Chair, but it's true that it's not my subject matter.
Okay, thanks, David. Thanks for picking that up. Thoughts, comments? Tom Lloyd. As David says, this is a statutory requirement. We have been asked to note the draft joint independent advocacy plan application on the 1st of March 24, which enabled us to meet the recommendations and to approve the draft joint independent advocacy plans in Appendix 3 and 4. No further comments or questions? Liz has obviously done a great deal of work on it. Attached. Go on, Pat.
Yes, I suppose there's just a question about people who use drug and alcohols, and that it does look like they are covered by this independent advocacy plan. I just wanted to check that is correct. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that point where it does address some of those areas of red that we had earlier in the directions report. You know, that independent advocacy is one of the things that would link into that, which would help us achieve some of those. No one else?
Move the recommendations in 2.1 minutes.
I was just about to say that. So can we note the draft joint independent advocacy plans and approve the draft joint independent advocacy plans as recommended? Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to item 14, which is any other business deemed urgent by the chair due to need for a decision. And I don't think that we'd be allowed to make a decision because it's a pre-election period, so I don't think anybody's commenting. So if nobody's got anything, no, any other comments? We'll call this meeting to an end. Okay. Thank you for your engagement. Told you I get you done, Ian.
Right.